Welcome to The Critique, where today we are analyzing a cultural commentary script that argues Hollywood is intentionally humiliating Sydney Sweeney through explicit roles, and that conservative audiences need to reject this trend.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating piece of work.
It is, but let's just dive right into our first major area for growth regarding how the core argument is constructed.
Absolutely, let's get into it.
The central argument regarding the subject's agency really wavers between portraying her as a passive victim and a calculating opportunist, which, dilutes the overall critique of Hollywood.
Right, yeah, this is a classic foundational issue we see in a lot of cultural analysis. When we look at the mechanics of this script, a really conflicting narrative emerges right from the first few pages. The weakness here is that it presents this completely contradictory idea about Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah, early on, the text suggests Hollywood is subjecting her to this quote-unquote humiliation ritual, right?
Exactly. The writer points specifically to that upcoming Sleepy Hollow erotic thriller remake.
Oh, yeah.
To argue she is being intentionally degraded by this predatory industry. And the text even highlights her direct quotes to Variety where she talks about feeling dehumanized.
Right, feeling like an object to whatever.
Yeah, but then, almost without warning, the script completely shifts its premise.
It's quite jarring. It creates this intense friction because later on it explicitly states she is, not a victim in this at all.
Right.
It just pivots to pointing out that her own production company is actively pursuing these roles.
Projects like Immaculate and Anyone But You.
Exactly. And it argues that she cares way more about money than artistic integrity. So this friction makes it incredibly confusing for the audience to determine who the actual antagonist is,
Oh, completely. It's like, is the villain the monolithic Hollywood machine forcing her into this hypersexualized box? Or is the villain the actress herself, cynically exploiting it?
You can't effectively run both software programs at the same time without the system crashing.
That is a perfect way to put it. When a cultural critique can't definitively identify the driver of the rot it's criticizing, the audience they lose the thread completely.
So how do we fix that? Because they have all this compelling evidence, right? The Variety quotes, the production company facts. We don't want them to just delete half of their research.
No, definitely not. You keep all the evidence. The suggestion here is to reconcile these 2 points by synthesizing them into a single cohesive theory.
Okay, like how?
We'll frame her as a willing, calculated participant in a toxic system, rather than bouncing the reader violently between the extremes of helpless victimhood and mastermind opportunist.
Right.
For a concrete example, you could take that humiliation ritual concept and rephrase it as a transactional ritual.
Oh, I like that. A transactional ritual.
Right? So you frame it like Hollywood demands a spectacle, and Sweeney, despite her complaints to Variety about feeling dehumanized, willingly provides it through her own production company to secure her fame.
That's so much stronger. It bridges the gap perfectly.
It really does. Or look at another example. There's a section where she complains about the industry's double standards.
Right, about men winning awards for nudity while women are dehumanized?
Exactly. Instead of using that as purely evidence of her victimhood, use it as a setup to highlight the irony of her choices.
Right, so you'd say something like, she correctly identifies the industry's double standard, yet strategically leans into it anyway.
Yes, proving that the allure of stardom often overrides the desire for artistic respect. You take the exact same evidence, but you point the arrow in a single, unified direction.
But wait, let me push back on that conceptually for a sec.
Okay, sure. It's a pivotal question. I would argue it makes a critique of Hollywood significantly more devastating.
Really? How so?
Because think about the systemic incentives at play. A truly predatory system doesn't just crush people from the outside, right?
Right, it's not always just a brute force thing.
Exactly. It creates an environment where people actively and enthusiastically commodify themselves to thrive.
Wow, yeah. It's the difference between a prison and a casino. In one, you are forced against your will. In the other, the environment is engineered so perfectly that you willingly hand over everything you have while thinking it was your own idea.
What a fantastic analogy. Yes, exactly. It moves the argument away from a simplistic, cartoonish, big bad Hollywood narrative.
And elevates it to something much more mature.
Yeah. So moving on, once the author clarifies who is driving this media landscape, the script naturally tries to offer a solution.
Right, which brings us to our second critique. The abrupt placement of the self-promotional book pitch fractures the pacing and abruptly halts the intellectual momentum of the cultural analysis.
Oh man, this is a critical structural issue. The weakness here is it's jarring. Right after establishing this high-stakes thesis about the degradation of culture and the Sleepy Hollow remake, the script completely abandons the topic.
To pitch The Soul Catcher and the Valiant Frontiers sci-fi trilogy.
Exactly. Dropping a commercial for an ebook or audiobook right into the middle of a heated cultural critique disorients the reader.
It's a bit like a doctor diagnosing a complex systemic illness and then abruptly trying to sell you a multivitamin before explaining the actual cure.
Yes.
I mean, the audience needs to hear the full diagnosis before they are ready to buy into the remedy.
That dynamic is exactly what's happening here. It fundamentally breaks that parasocial trust. You undermine the seriousness of your argument just as it's getting started.
So what is the suggestion here? Just cut it?
No, you don't have to cut it. Reposition it and reframe the self-promotion so it acts as the thematic climax of the piece, seamlessly integrated into the third option solution presented at the very end of the script.
Okay, let's give the listeners a concrete example of how to execute.
Sure. The most straightforward way is to physically move the book pitch to the final paragraph.
Right.
After discussing how audiences shouldn't settle for the binary choice of Hollywood's extremes, you introduce the book as the ultimate antithesis.
So you'd write something like, you don't have to choose A or B. You can choose a third option, clean fiction. That's exactly why I wrote The Soul Catcher.
Precisely. By structuring it this way, the product is no longer a commercial interruption. It's the ideological antidote.
That's a great frame, but let's look at the reality of content creation. Some authors might insist on keeping it early in the script for, algorithmic reasons or retention metrics.
Right. They're terrified of audience drop-off.
Yeah. If they absolutely have to keep it early, how do they do it without shattering the flow?
If they insist on keeping it early, they need to weave it into the argument conceptually rather than as a hard sales pitch.
How would that look in practice?
You use the book solely as an ideological foil. For example, contrast the morally compromised characters of Euphoria or the Sleepy Hollow remake with the great science fiction heroes in your own work.
Ah, okay.
Modern thrillers. We need a return to classic heroic storytelling, which is the ethos behind my Valiant Frontiers series.
And then immediately pivot back to the critique.
Exactly. You plant the seed, but you never hit pause on the narrative momentum.
I love that. It's smooth. But even if they fix that flow, we still have to look at how they address their core readership, which leads to our third area of critique.
This one is huge.
Yeah, the direct confrontational admonition of the target audience's hypocrisy risks triggering defensiveness and alienating the core readership before they can even absorb the broader message.
We really have to unpack the tone being deployed here. The weakness is that the script actively scolds its own conservative audience.
Right, accusing them of a simping epidemic.
Yeah, and unfavorably comparing them to the Goonergate crowd in video games.
It's intense. I mean, calling out the hypocrisy of a values-driven audience who champions someone producing explicit content, that's actually a really strong point to make.
It is a strong point, but using highly insulting internet slang like gooners and simping towards your own listener creates an adversarial tone. It makes the reader feel attacked rather than enlightened.
Exactly. The moment an audience feels attacked by the host, the flow of information stops completely. Their psychological defensive walls just shoot right up.
And once those walls are up, they aren't listening to your analysis of Hollywood. They certainly aren't going to buy your sci-fi book.
They're just formulating a defense in their head.
Right. So the suggestion here is to shift the framing from an accusation of the audience's moral failure to a critique of the media ecosystem that is actively tricking and manipulating the audience's natural instincts.
So you align yourself with the audience against the manipulative system.
Exactly. For a concrete example, you could validate the audience's initial impulse before pivoting to the critique.
Right, so instead of calling them hypocrites, you add something like, it is entirely natural to appreciate traditional beauty, but the media is weaponizing that against you by taking a conservative coded aesthetic and using it to smuggle in explicit content. Don't fall for the trick.
The psychological difference there is just night and day. You're empowering the reader to see through the illusion rather than shaming them.
But let me ask you this. By smoothing out this direct attack on the audience, is there a risk that the author loses the raw, provocative, tell-it-like-it-is edge that vlog audiences typically tune in for?
That's a really valid concern.
Right, because how can they remain edgy without being alien?
You don't want to lose the edge, but the edge has to be a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. And there's a really effective way to do this. Utilize the quotes from conservative commentators Laura LaRose and Allie Beth Struckley earlier in the section.
Oh, because right now those quotes are buried later on.
Exactly. Right now, the author yells at the audience and then brings in the commentators. Instead, flip it.
So lead with those respected voices.
Yes. Lead with respected voices who share the audience's values. Have them point out the tension. For example, use the quote about how just because hotness is conservative coded doesn't mean we should applaud objectification.
Oh, I see.
By doing that, the author can gently guide the audience to self-reflection without sounding like a scolding parent. You let the respected peers do the heavy lifting.
That completely changes the power dynamic. It moves the host from the role of an angry disciplinarian to a trusted guide navigating a complex trap alongside the audience.
And when you're a trusted guide, that's when the audience is finally ready to listen to your third option and check out your book.
It all connects beautifully. All right, let's quickly recap the 3 main actionable takeaways from today's critique. First, synthesizing the subject's agency into a cohesive theory of transactional participation.
Right, bringing together the humiliation ritual with her active business choices.
Exactly. Second, shifting the self-promotional book pitch to the end to serve as a thematic climax, or at least weaving it conceptually if it stays early.
Moving it from a commercial break to a philosophical stand.
Yep. And finally, reframing the critique of the audience away from internet insults and toward a shared analysis of media manipulation.
Validating their instincts and using pure quotes to maintain that edge.
Absolutely. Well, we want to thank the listener for submitting such a passionate and thought-provoking piece. We warmly invite you to submit your revised draft or future works back to the critique for further analysis.
Yeah, we'd love to see where it goes next.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.